Hello, and welcome to Learn Family University's course, Student Wellbeing and Successful Online Learning. This is the fourth of 9 videos that will be released from December 11th, 2020 to January 22nd, 2021. I'm your presenter today. I'm Pamela Santerre, the coordinator of online learning for Learn. My contact information is on the screen. Please contact me via email or phone. I'm happy to help your child and you be successful with distance learning in any way that I can. During this course, you will learn about the principles of well-being that you can use to support the development of your child's social and emotional learning, including the ability to navigate social interactions and build friendships. These are concepts that parents, students, and teachers have found useful on the journey to ensure that learning happens away from the place that we call school. Having said that, you know your child best. It's not worth a dramatic battle to implement all of these recommendations. We care that your child wants to learn and knows how to learn way more than we care if your child complies with the general ideas collected from others. This is Module 4, Part A, Building Self-Regulation. As caregivers, we all know young people who are fully capable of learning, but are having a problem getting to the learning. You may be just as confused as to why this young person is struggling. Research shows that many of these young people don't know how to do school, organize their materials, keep track of due dates, ask the teacher for help, etc. In other words, these young people are struggling with self-regulation. Self-regulation is the ability to successfully manage one's emotions, thoughts, and behaviors in different situations. It's the ability to work towards and set personal and academic goals. When COVID-19 happened and distance learning began, we saw all young people struggle to some degree with self-regulation. To get started, we're going to watch this video from Dr. Anne Louise Lockhart of A New Day Pediatric Psychology. This video was recorded at the beginning of COVID-19 pandemic teaching on April 2nd, 2020.
What is co-regulation and self-regulation, and why are these concepts so important for children, parents, and just people in general? Hi, I'm Dr. Anne Louise Lockhart, and I'm a pediatric psychologist, a parent coach, and I'm the president and owner of A New Day Pediatric Psychology in San Antonio, Texas. So co-regulation is a concept that you may or may not have heard about, but it's something that's pretty important. Why? It's because co-regulation occurs before self-regulation can occur. Let's start with the definitions first. So co-regulation is the ability to monitor, to discipline, to kind of keep yourself in balance when things are a little bit off. Co-regulation occurs because someone else helps us to do it. So for example, that might be a parent kind of rocking a baby to help quiet them down. Maybe it's the parent who rubs their toddler's back after they've hurt themselves. That might be holding a teenager's hand because they've just had their heart broken. That might be you giving an encouraging word to your spouse or partner because they just had a very upsetting conversation with their parent. Co-regulation occurs in very, very subtle ways sometimes because we don't even realize another person is helping us to keep ourselves balanced, emotionally regulated, and in control. It's a way of us venting to a concerned, caring other who we are securely attached to or care a lot about. So in order to be self-regulated, we have to have a really good model of co-regulation and people in our life who help us to co-regulate. So self-regulation then occurs because we are able to keep ourselves in balance when things are off balance. It's knowing when to eat. It's knowing when to get sleep, when to wake up, when you are ready to socialize, and when you need time to yourself. It's about knowing and reading your internal and body cues external body cues as well, so that you know how to meet your needs. So why that's important is because if you are an adult or a parent who you feel like you lose control easily because you're very dysregulated, what happens is that you in turn escalate your dysregulated children. A dysregulated child is not able to regulate themselves in the presence of a dysregulated parent. Does that make sense? So a child who is all over the place, screaming, having a meltdown, upset, anxious, angry, and then they have a parent come in and scream at them and threaten them and yell at them, and those are two dysregulated individuals. They're not going to help each other out. Yelling does not help to regulate a dysregulated child. Neither does threatening. So then what helps? If a child learns that the only way to listen and the only way to feel heard is when another adult loses it and they are dysregulated and screaming, then what you're doing is you're basically training your kid to only listen to you when you've lost it. That they've learned to only listen to you when you are screaming and you are so out of control and upset. And then they finally listen. Now they've learned that's the only way they'll listen to you. Their eyes, ears, whole body now becomes accustomed to you being dysregulated. And now what you've taught your child is the only way to regulate is to first be so dysregulated that I can calm myself down. It becomes a very confusing process, as you can see. And then we're teaching our kids the wrong thing. So I took some notes here, and I want to be able to kind of show you and teach you and talk to you about how to do this. So in order to teach our children how to self-regulate, we have to teach them. That means we do this by remaining calm. Take a breath. Talk to yourself and say, is my reaction that I'm about to have, is this the most productive way of responding to my child? Is this their issue or is this my issue? Are my needs being met? Am I feeling out of control? Am I feeling irritated by this behavior? Do I feel like I haven't had a break? Those are all important questions to ask. However, it does not justify you reacting to your child in a dysregulated manner because you haven't been regulated. It's very important that remaining calm, taking a breath, and critically asking yourself some important questions before responding is important so that you don't react. The other part is when you are speaking to your child, then you speak in a firm but calm manner. Because if you start to come across to your child as angry, frustrated, impatient, that's going to trigger in them a need to defend themselves, to feel like I have to kind of guard against this angry parent. They're going to see you as a threat, so then they retaliate back because of your response and your reaction to them. Remaining calm and in control of your own emotions is the third most important part. So remaining calm, speaking in a firm and direct voice, and then remaining in control and of your emotions and words are going to be super important during this time. So that way you're not saying words that you later regret and that you want to take back. And this is all important because when our emotions get triggered, when we feel out of control, our logic center shuts down, which means we don't think clearly, we don't make healthy and appropriate decisions, and we kind of feel like we've lost our minds in a sense. Our emotion and logic are pretty much processed in the same general part of our brain. So when our emotions get triggered in a major way, we don't think straight. We go into fight, flight, or freeze response, and we don't respond to situations appropriately. That is why it's so important as a parent that you respond in a calm way, because you cannot engage a child who is emotionally dysregulated by you being emotionally dysregulated. You engage them when you can remain calm, so that brings down their emotions. It helps them to get back into the calm and logical part of their brain. So then both of you can then interact and speak to each other in a calm manner. Now, one last thing. During this time of significant isolation and social distancing, we have a need to engage and be a part of a community. Even if you're very introverted, you like being by yourself, we all need to feel connected. Families are going to connect in one way or the other. And sometimes the way a child connects is through behavior that looks like negative behavior. We all have a desire to connect. So if you connect in a way that's negative, it's still a connection. So instead, teach them differently on how to connect by you modeling the appropriate way to regulate yourself and connect in a way that's healthy, appropriate, and secure. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you all are doing the best. You know that you're doing the best that you can. This is a very hard time. I'm with you. We're here to support you. Please reach out. Let us know how we can help you. Stay safe. Stay home. I'm Dr. Anne-Louise Lockhart.
Self-regulation is important because it promotes well-being across the lifespan, including physical, emotional, and economic health and educational achievement. Self-regulation is influenced by stress and adversity in the environment, as well as caregiving supports and a child's own biology, skills, and motivation. Self-regulation includes organizational skills, impulse control, stress management, self-discipline, self-motivation, and goal setting. There are two ways that you can help your child develop self-regulation. First, give them instruction on developing self-regulation skills. And two, support self-regulation development by using 3 strategies in a process called co-regulation. As humans, we are not born with the tools to self-regulate. Notice a newborn's cries as it seeks its mother for comfort, or the toddler who is whining or throwing a tantrum in the middle of the store. These are signs that they don't have great self-regulation skills, nor should they. They're young children. Much like math, science, and reading, self-regulation is a skill to be learned. Some people believe that self-regulation has to be taught in childhood, but actually, it's not too late to make a difference in the young adolescent and young adult years. Research has now shown that there are major changes in brain architecture that occur during adolescence, making intervention at this age important and timely. In particular, during early and mid-adolescence, example 11 to 15 years, brain systems that seek rewards and process emotions are more developed than the cognitive control systems responsible for good decision making and future planning. In other words, this means that self-regulation is naturally, developmentally out of balance at this age. It also means that tremendous growth in self-regulation skills continues through young adulthood, and they can be strengthened with instruction and support. And given that the poor decisions during adolescence can have long-term negative consequences, self-regulation supports during this developmental period are crucial. Self-regulation develops and is learned through interaction with caregivers and the broader environment over an extended period from birth through young adulthood and beyond. Cognitive, emotional, and behavioral self-regulation skills can be taught, like literacy, with structure, support, and coaching over time. Even for youth with self-regulation challenges or delays, effective interventions can strengthen and improve skills. There are ongoing opportunities for intervention throughout the child's life. However, there are a number of other factors that influence whether a youth will self regulate in any given situation. Importantly, although self regulation is an internal capacity, its development and use depends on predictable, responsive, and supportive environments and relationships. Contrary to the media messages that suggest teenagers are already independent and don't need adults, caregivers are critical to healthy development throughout adolescence and into young adulthood. Caregivers and mentors are particularly important in the development of self regulation. There are many critical self regulation skills under development during this period that involve increased complexity in thinking, managing frustration and stress, and integrating thoughts and emotions in a way that supports goal achievement as well as compassion towards self and others. To help our young people gain the full range of skills they need for adulthood, caregivers, including parents and teachers, can coach self regulation skills through modeling, providing opportunity to practice skills, monitoring and reinforcing adolescents' progress in skill development and goals, and coaching them on how, why, and when to use their skills in increasingly complex situations. For example, conflicts between work and school demands, living independently, etc. Caregivers can also provide warm and responsive relationships where youth feel safe to learn and make mistakes as they increasingly navigate bigger decisions and more challenging situations on their own. For example, making decisions regarding risk behaviors in the context of peer pressure. Caregiving relationships and mentoring can also serve to motivate youth to learn, practice, and implement self regulation skills. And finally, caregivers can structure the environment to make self regulation manageable, providing a buffer against environmental stressors. This involves limiting opportunity for risk taking behaviors, providing positive discipline and natural consequences for poor decisions, and reducing the emotional intensity of conflict situation. For example, giving them time and space to calm down as needed. These 3 points describe the supportive process between adults and youth that we call co regulation. Co regulation provides assistance and support for optimal self regulation through warm and responsive interactions. Support, coaching, and modeling are provided to facilitate a youth's ability to understand, express, and modulate their thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. How caregivers can co regulate with their young children depends entirely on the age of the child and their self regulation needs. The link below gives an introduction to each age range, the developmentally typical characteristics of self regulation at that age, and the ways that caregivers can support co regulation. By clicking on the link, you can choose to read each or simply skip to the age ranges of your young people. So, why do some young people need more support with self regulation than others? Well, greater levels of support are needed for youth who have self regulation difficulties due to individual characteristics or adverse childhood experiences. Those individual differences may be due to temperament or genetic factors that influence how youth respond and react to stress. Adverse experiences may include physical or emotional abuse, caregiver substance abuse or mental illness, exposure to violence, and the accumulated burdens of poverty. In addition, youth living in chronic adversity are less likely to have caregivers who they themselves have the resources for their own self regulation and for co regulation. Such youth are also likely to lack resources and positive climates in their schools, neighborhoods, and communities to support self regulation development. Youth with individual or environmental risk factors may have delays in self regulation development that cause difficulties in maintaining positive relationships with others and contribute to disruptive and risky behaviors. They may overreact in stressful situations and have trouble using effective coping strategies. Moreover, their expectations for the future may be limited, which may reduce their motivation in long term goal setting. Therefore, youth who experience adversity are vulnerable to a range of negative, lifelong health and mental health difficulties without intervention. Fortunately, evidence suggests that co regulation and other interventions focused on skill instruction, caregiver support, and environmental context can reverse those effects and improve long term outcomes. So, what's the big deal about stress? Isn't it good for us? Stress is one of the biggest challenges that youth face in peer relationships at school, at home, at work. And although manageable stress may build coping skills, ongoing high intensity stress that overwhelms existing skills and supports can create toxic effects that negatively impact development and can produce long term changes in brain architecture. In fact, the development of self regulation can be disrupted by prolonged or pronounced stress and adversity, including poverty and trauma. So, ongoing overwhelming experiences of stress can physically change the wiring of the brain to rely more heavily on emotional reactions rather than on reflection, reasoning, and decision making. And these changes can make youth more sensitive and reactive to later experiences of stress. That can be adaptive in some situations, but it's generally associated with negative outcomes. This prior exposure to stress may explain why some young people are adapting to the changes brought by COVID-19 and distance learning more easily than others. Here's the good news. A small but growing body of research on preventative self regulation interventions for children and teens show that positive and meaningful changes can result from several different intervention approaches, including conflict resolution, anger coping, stress management, resiliency training, yoga, and mindfulness. And the rest of this module provides you with an introduction to some of these interventions, along with some strategies that you can use and share with your young people. In the rest of the module, we will give you some direct strategies on how you can help your child develop self regulation. We will present both in this video. You can watch both or simply fast forward to the one that is relevant to your child's age. We will first cover the zones of regulation, a framework for teaching young people strategies for emotional and sensory self management. This is recommended for caregivers of young people in elementary school. The zones of self regulation uses 4 colors to help students identify how they are feeling in the moment, given their emotions and the level of alertness, as well as guide them to strategies to support regulation. By understanding how to notice their body signals, detect triggers, and read social context and consider how their behavior impacts those around them, those young people learn improved emotional control, sensory regulation, self awareness, and problem solving abilities. For our caregivers of young people in middle and high school, we'll then cover the ABCs of self regulation, a framework for understanding self regulation from Dr. Richard Cash. According to Dr. Cash, self regulation is the ability to manage, control, and monitor affect, behavior, and cognition. That's what he calls the ABCs of learning to achieve success. All 3 of those ABCs must work together to achieve our goals. One without the other 2, or 2 without the other 1, usually doesn't make us successful. Students who struggle often don't or don't know how to efficiently use the ABCs of self regulation. So, first, we'll talk about the zones of regulation. This was a framework to develop self regulation and emotional control, developed by Leah, I'm going to say her name wrong, Kuipers. Regulation is sometimes called self control, self management, or impulse control. So, this is just a brief overview for caregivers. We will talk about what the zones of regulation are, how they're taught to children, and how you can begin using the concepts in your own home. So, the zones of regulation teach children a variety of social emotional skills, starting with early emotional skills and advancing on to self regulation and navigating social situations. Some of the skills taught during the zones of regulation are identifying your emotions by categorizing feelings into 4 zones, more on that later, self regulation, achieving the preferred state of alertness for a situation, which is all about regulating your body and emotional regulation. Identifying triggers, in other words, learning what makes you tick and why. Coping strategies, various techniques and strategies that help achieve emotional regulation and manage strong emotions. The size of the problem, which is the idea that the size of your reaction should match the size of your problem. How to identify the size of your problem and strategies for problem solving. And expected behavior versus unexpected behavior. This also covers the perspective taking and how your behavior affects the thoughts and feelings of people around you. The zones of regulation uses 4 colors to help children self-identify how they're feeling and categorize it based on color. This also helps children better understand their emotions, their sensory needs, and their thinking patterns. They learn different strategies to help them cope and manage their emotions based on which color zone they're in. Additionally, it helps them recognize their own triggers, learn to read facial expressions, develop problem solving skills, and become more attuned to how their actions affect other people. So, the blue zone is when a person is feeling low states of alertness or arousal. When you're in the blue zone, you may be feeling down, sad, sick, tired, or bored. You're still in control, but with low energy emotions. The green zone is used to describe when you're in a calm state of alertness. Being in the green zone means that you're calm, focused, happy, or ready to learn. This is predominantly the state you want your child to be in. It's also the state most needed in distance learning and the classroom in order to learn. The yellow zone describes when you have a heightened sense of alertness. This isn't always a bad thing, and you typically still have some control when you're in the yellow zone. Being in the yellow zone may mean that you feel frustrated, anxious, or nervous, but it could also mean that you're feeling excited, silly, or hyper, which is okay in the right situation. And finally, the red zone. The red zone describes an extremely heightened state of intense emotions. When a person reaches the red zone, they're no longer about to control their emotions or reactions. This is the zone that kids are in during meltdowns. Being in the red zone means you're feeling anger, rage, terror, complete devastation, and you feel out of control. The first step in teaching the zones to your child is teaching them the 4 zones and which emotions fall into each zone. It's necessary that your child is accurately able to identify which emotions belong in the zone. This is the first step to their success. You'll achieve this through practicing with your child, talking about the zones frequently and in different environments, and encourage them to identify which zone they're in. In the description below this video, I will share the links to these activities. You can read an introduction story with your child. You can play zones of regulation bingo. You can read books about feelings and actively refer to which zone the feelings in the book belong to. You can match TV characters as zones. When you're watching TV or movies with your child, ask them to identify which zone their favorite characters are in throughout the show. This is a great way to turn that screen time into a learning experience and to help them see that those zones can be found anywhere. And then finally, there's a body check activity. You can use this activity to help your child identify how they experience different emotions and talk about which zone these different feelings fall into. To support your child, you can use the language and talk about the concepts of the zone as they apply throughout your day and in a variety of environments. Make these comments aloud so that your child understands that moving from zone to zone is natural and that we all experience different zones, and we use these strategies to help regulate or help ourselves. For example, you could say something like, "This is really frustrating me. It's making me go into yellow zone. I need to use a tool to calm down. I'm going to take some deep breaths." You can also point out your observations as your child moves from one zone to the other. For example, your body looks like it's tired. You might be in the blue zone. You can validate the zone your child is in and help your child brainstorm expected ways to self regulate so that their behavior is expected for that situation. For example, you look really upset. Maybe you want to have some time to yourself while you calm down, or would you rather I stay nearby? You can also share with your child how his or her behavior is affecting the zone you're in as a caregiver and how you feel. Show interest in learning about your child's triggers and the tools that they use for their zones. Ask if your child wants reminders to use these tools and discuss how you should present these reminders. Make sure to positively reinforce your child for recognizing their zone and managing their behavior while in it, rather than only pointing out when your child is demonstrating unexpected behaviors. And finally, it's important to know that everyone experiences all of the zones. The red and yellow zones are not the bad or naughty zones. All of the zones are expected at one time or another, just as we experience a wide range of emotions as human beings. The zones of regulation is intended to be neutral and not communicate judgment. All emotions are okay, and all the zones are okay. So, Leah Cuppers, the author of The Zones of Regulation, created a short video to help kids at home put together their own zones of regulation check ins for families. This is something that you can do with your child and your family.
Hey guys, I'm Leah Kuipers. I'm the creator and author of the Zones of Regulation. And today I want to share with you some ideas on how you can make your own Zones of Regulation check-in for you and your family while we are doing distant learning. So, step one is watch this video, and you're already doing that. And I've included with this checklist that you can go through each of the steps of how to create your own zones check-in at home. In step two, I want you to think about what you want your zones visual to look like. Maybe you just use the handout that we've included for you. You can color in the 4 zones and use a Post-it to represent each person in your family so that they can be checking in. Maybe you want to use Legos and create a Lego character to represent each person in the family. Maybe you're going to use magazines and put together a collage. Be creative and take a moment to brainstorm what's going to work for you and your family. In step 3, you're going to be gathering your materials to create your check-in. You might think about getting scissors, glue, maybe magazines, Legos, paper clips or clothespins to put your name on, maybe Post-it notes. So I'll give you a moment to do that, and you can press pause and we'll come back together once you've got everything together. In step 4, we are going to be doing the creating. When you create your zones check-in, make sure you have each of the 4 color zones shown, as well as a way to represent each person in your family. You might even want to include a pet. I'm going to go get my family and get some help in creating our zones check-in for our family here at our house. So let's go.
Next,
W. What do you think about that turtle?
He's in the
blue.
I think so too.
There we have the blue.
How were they feeling?
Maybe bored or exhausted.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So here's Libby, our dog. And here's Craig, the crayfish. In step 5, we're thinking about where is an easy place to have our zones check in. Maybe it's in your kitchen, maybe your living room, someplace you spend a lot of time so that people can check in throughout the day. Them. Blue them. Lastly, step 6 is start checking in. Now that we have our zones check-in up, we need to use it. We recommend at least one time a day, everyone in the family check in. But the more we check in, the more we can recognize how we're feeling and find our tools to take care of those zones, as well as see how other people in our family are feeling and help each other out.
Livy lays around in the blue a lot. Where are you now? Let's check in with our zones this morning. Where are you guys at? How are you feeling?
Green zone. I'm all happy. Red and yellow.
I'm in the green. Daddy, how about you? Blue. Daddy's in the blue. Tired or bored?
I hope you and your family stay healthy, and I know you guys are working hard to regulate your zones and get through all those challenges that come with staying at home. All my best. Bye-bye.
In addition to co-regulation, you can help your child develop self-regulation by giving them instruction on how they can develop those skills. This is really helpful for our children who are in middle school and high school. So, to understand this, we have to understand Dr. Richard Cash's elements of self-regulation. He believes that self-regulation is the intersection of 3 different dimensions: our ABCs, our affect, our behaviors, and our cognition. And it's these dimensions that have to work together to propel us towards success. The affect dimension is how we feel about a situation. There's enough neural and emotional study out there to tell us how we feel about a situation determines the focus of our attention. So if we don't feel good about being someplace, our attention turns towards a survival aspect. So back in the prehistoric days, the survival aspect meant those things that were going to literally kill us. However, in 2021, for us and our brains, our survival aspect might mean those things that really just stress us out, right? And so, for example, it might be math that's going to metaphorically kill you because it's metaphorically killed you since you were a kindergartner. So, every time you enter the math classroom or you work on math, you're going to go into a downshift of feeling bad about yourself or feeling intimidated by the task. And how do you feel about being in school? Do you feel like it's punishment or a sense of joy? Feelings are something that we can manage and control because that happens up here in the forebrain or the prefrontal cortex. That's the thinking part of our brain. Emotion is something different. It's the chemical reaction that happens in the midbrain or the limbic system that's not controllable. It's something that's natural to us. It's a chemical reaction. So when the prefrontal cortex or the forebrain and the rest of our bodies become aware of the chemical reaction that's happening in our midbrain, it responds to that, whether internally or externally. Those responses are our affect or our feelings. So, though the emotion is a chemical process, we can teach kids how to manage and control the feelings. So, anytime someone says, "You made me feel X," that's not someone who's self regulating well at the time. Because according to Dr. Cash, only we can control our feelings. How we feel about something is our job to manage and control. But we have to teach kids how to manage their emotions, not blame other people for it. Behavior is defined as the actions that we perform that are initiated, sustained, changed, or developed based on internal and external factors. Behavior can be both conscious and unconscious. In the learning process, behavior includes skills and strategies, how to do something, communication, how to talk to someone to be heard, collaboration, how to work with others to be successful, and work habits, how to get something done on your own. Social interactions, such as getting along, working with others, following directions, listening, so on, those are behavioral. And young people can and should learn appropriate social behaviors. And in most cases, we as parents and caregivers and teachers tend to do a very good job helping students develop this dimension. However, we tend to isolate behavior from the other two dimensions when we're addressing or managing behavior. And as Dr. Cash says, you need all three to work together to have true self-regulation. So the C in the ABCs stands for cognition. And cognition is the learning in social emotional learning. Without thinking, there is no learning. So in simple terms, cognition is the conscious act of thinking. It's the mental process people go through from very simple or subtle processes, such as, being aware of your senses and recalling facts, to very complex or abstracted levels of thinking, such as creative thinking, decision making, critical reasoning. Cognition increases through learning experiences, whether it's repetition, practice, or discovery based. And there are 3 levels to cognition: metacognition, infracognition, and metaphysical cognition. The first level is metacognition, or thinking about our own thinking. This close thinking is the reflection process we go through throughout the day. Whether it be the self-talk of, "Oh, why did I do it that way?" to pondering future solutions or decisions. For example, if I work hard enough, I can ace this test. Students who demonstrate greater self-regulation utilize metacognition to stay positive when faced with a challenge, acknowledge their strengths and limitations, set and monitor goals, reflect on failures as an opportunity for growth, and reflect on successes to keep succeeding. Above metacognition is infracognition, which are the structures of learning, such as critical thinking, creative thinking, decision making, and so forth. These are infrastructural, they have a structure to them. So when I reflect on something, I can then raise it up to that level and put a structure around it. The third level is the most complex, metaphysical cognition, which is existential thinking, the thinking beyond yourself. So that is when you're thinking philosophically, theoretically, or religiously. You're thinking outside of yourself. And all three of these have to work together. You cannot isolate one and expect there to be change. So let me give you some examples. One of my favorite shows, and I'm not advertising, is the TV show Schitt's Creek. In the show, a very wealthy family loses all of their money and they're forced to move into a rundown motel. Their behavior of living in luxury has changed, but they don't know how to deal with the emotional affect and how to plan and organize themselves for success. How about a personal example? If you feel bad about something, you might start thinking negatively about yourself, and then you start to try to make yourself feel better with negative behaviors. For example, it's the season of resolutions. If you decide you're going to try to lose weight, but your coworker brings some incredible donuts into work one morning and you indulge, you might start to get upset with your lack of self-control. You might start to think things like, I'm such a failure. I'm never going to lose weight. And you may decide to stop for Chinese food and Ben & Jerry's on the way home. But that perpetuates. That's a negative behavior that perpetuates the negative cognition, which then perpetuates negative feelings. So, as a self regulated individual, instead of stopping at a fast food restaurant on the way home, you could stop at the gym or take your dog for a walk. And then you can naturally start to feel better about yourself. You then start to say, I'm not a failure. One donut didn't get me to the weight I am, and I can have a healthier meal tonight and tomorrow. You just used your ABCs to get yourself back online. So remember, affect is your feelings, your focus, and your motivation. So to help your young people develop affect awareness, openly discuss with them how you deal with difficult situations, stress, and feeling bad. Teach kids how to recognize the power they have over their feelings by teaching them to recognize their feelings and how to keep them positive. When young people are feeling anxious or worried, have them talk to you or someone they trust so they don't have to deal with those feelings alone. To alleviate anxiety, have young people consider the best and worst outcomes, and the outcome will be there somewhere in the middle. So remember, behavior is skills and strategies, communication, collaboration, and work habits. To help your child develop social behaviors, be a model for your young people and how you work with others, and demonstrate how you engage and negotiate with adults and other children. Provide young people with opportunities to work collaboratively with others who aren't like them. Give young people roles in working in groups so all kids can be involved in the work. When it's when it's appropriate with COVID, give them some opportunities to engage in diverse cultural activities such as theater, film, or field trips. And support young people in their positive interactions with others by providing them with some descriptive feedback on what went well and what needs adjustments. And finally, cognition. Remember, that's metaphysical cognition, infracognition, and metacognition or reflection. So to help your child become more cognitively aware, as a caregiver, think out loud. This will demonstrate to your young people your line of thinking. Help them set some reasonable short-term goals. What are their goals for that online learning class period or lesson? Have those young people reflect on how they felt, which their affect, what they did, their behavior to achieve or not achieve their goals. If they didn't achieve their goal, have them think about what they can do better next time. That's metacognition. Directly challenge students' critical reasoning and creative thinking strategies. These tools will be helpful in problem solving and decision making. And praise your child's efforts over their achievement. Effort is the key to success. We all want our young people to be successful. Some students come to school with greater degrees of self-regulated learning, while others need some more modeling and supports along the way. So all students can value from keeping the ABCs in mind while they're learning. How do I feel when I'm successful? What will I do to be successful? And what's my goal or plan to be successful? So think about this. Which of the ABCs, affect, behavior, and cognition, do you feel like your young people struggle with the most? What are some strategies that you will try in the upcoming weeks to help them develop this area? Thank you for joining us today. Here are the resources that were referenced in this video. They are also linked in the description below. Module 4, Part B, Understanding Emotional Intelligence, is available now. Do you want to dive deeper into this topic? Register for our self-paced course. The link is on the screen. Thanks for joining us today. I'll see you in the next video.